Hey fellow music fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new here, my name's Nena, and today we're talking about an album that so many people seem to have such a deep personal connection to. And if you haven't yet heard the album, you probably will develop a personal connection to it once you finally listen to it. But it's the masterpiece October Rust from the band Type O Negative. It is definitely one of my favorite albums of all time, not just something that I dust off near Halloween. It has actually held a very special place in my heart since its release in 1996. I've always kind of felt that October Rust was something that seemed more like a full experience than something to simply listen to because it is just so immersive. So today I want to talk about what makes the album so unique and special and the psychology behind the album itself, as well as what was likely contributing to the overall mood and theme of the album, as well as the motivation for its distinct sound and lyrical choices. Now, if you're not yet familiar with Type O Negative and its frontman Peter Steele, I do have an in-depth analysis up on the channel. I will go ahead and link it down below. He was truly a visionary, a rare talent, and this video discusses who he was not only as an artist but also as a person. But today we are focusing entirely on October Rust, and like I said, I do want to talk about the psychological factors that I believe were at play in making the album what it became, as well as what was really going on for the band at the time. So I will discuss all of these things after the album analysis. Definitely stick with the video until the end because there are some pretty interesting things that were going on that helps us to really piece this entire album together. But before we dive in, just a quick request to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Also, I would love to hear if you agree with today's analysis or have something you'd like to add, so please feel free to leave your thoughts below. And also just a quick reminder that this analysis, especially when we start to talk about personality and mental health factors, is purely speculative and based on my own opinion. So that being said, let's get straight into October Rust. Now, this was actually their fourth studio release, and for context, I was already a fan of the band before this album came out and had seen them perform live twice. But I honestly was pretty lukewarm about the first two albums. It was only when Bloody Kisses came out, which directly precedes October Rust, that I felt that their sound had gotten a lot more mature and a lot more appealing. And there were also several very solid singles on that album that helped to really define their sound and their overall theme. So by that point, I was fully on board. I liked the whole vampire thing they were starting to embrace at the time. And I felt like their songs were more like gothic metal anthems than really just songs. It was like they were starting a movement, almost like a new genre of music. It was like the first two albums in that it was dark and aggressive and heavy and caused a lot of controversy, but it had a new element because many of the songs were actually very, very catchy. They had seemingly found the perfect formula and their fan base grew substantially, which is why October Rust, at least from a commercial standpoint, was really risky because they were planning to kind of veer from the formula that they had seen was really working out for them. This album could have been a turnoff for fans who were expecting the album to be more aggressive and heavy. Not that October Rust is not heavy and dark, but this album is noticeably even more melodic and has a lot more of a romantic tone, and these differences were substantial enough for critics to really contemplate whether or not this album could still be considered metal. But whatever your personal opinion is about that, it is hard to deny that October Rust is a masterpiece. It is one of the most unique and special albums I have ever heard, and it is special in that it is gothic gloom, but it is delivered in the most compelling, majestic, captivating, and almost vulnerable way. They were able to create a mood on that album that has simply never been replicated, not by any other artist, and interestingly enough, not even by the band itself. There are aspects about this album that they did not try to duplicate in any of their further releases. Yes, the essence of Type O Negative is in this album as well as in all of their work, but October Rust stands alone in the mood they were able to create. They were able to create something that was haunting yet completely compelling. It's a work of art that you can get completely lost in. Like I said earlier, this album is not something to just listen to. It's something that you can fully experience. It is an invitation to the lush and atmospheric and even dreamy world that only Peter Steele could create. One of the things that really sets this album apart is that I feel it has the greatest emotional depth as well as the strongest songwriting. In fact, I feel that each of the songs on the album are really worthy of dissection. And even though we're talking about really the album as a whole today, I may decide to dive deep into some of these specific compositions in the future. So to begin with, if we just isolate the lyrics, there is a sincerity there. They feel raw, they feel honest, and it seems like he's really exposing his insecurities. And since these are insecurities that so many of us share, the album itself feels very relatable. He also allows himself to show his sensitive side on the album, especially when it comes to themes of finding true love and partnership. There's almost an uncharacteristic optimism or idealism that can be seen in some songs that do talk about true love and connection. We can see this in songs like Be My Druidess, or my favorite track on the album, which is Love You to Death. It feels like there is an obsession there that is almost worshiping these imagined lovers. The album also explores a lot of his darker emotions to a new depth. We see themes of isolation and despair and betrayal and loss. Yet the album does not feel depressing. It feels more like it's simply depicting the full range of the human experience with the high highs and the low lows that we all tend to go through. But even with the roller coaster of emotions that we do see on October Rust, it doesn't seem disjointed or disconnected. It seems to all flow together perfectly. It's like every single song is a puzzle piece that fit together in just the right way to keep pulling you in. The album just feels so personal, and the lyrics really offer a level of sophistication that we rarely see on metal albums. But when we combine these eloquent words with Peter's incredible and completely captivating one-of-a-kind voice, the whole experience becomes almost ethereal. Peter actually had a vocal range of over 4 octaves and was able to deliver some of the most haunting and really mesmerizing low notes that I have ever heard in my life. He was an extraordinary vocalist, and October Rust really showcases his talent. No one could have delivered those beautiful words in exactly the same way, and no one really appreciated Autumn more than Peter did. So for those of us who wait year after year after year for October to come, this is really the perfect album because it allows us to eternally live in autumn whenever we want to. But beyond the lyrics and the vocals, it's also the actual music, both the overall sound as well as the specific compositions that make the album so phenomenal. It has such lush production, and the warmth from the fuzziness of the guitar and the bass is almost comforting. It's like a warm, dark blanket of layered keyboards and beautiful, distorted linear riffs. And this album is all about the melodies. It still has the gothic atmosphere, but the melodies really do take it to another level. And there's all these unexpected elements, like the gorgeous acoustic guitar in Green Man. It almost seems blissful and sorrowful at the same time. It's the last thing that you would really expect from a Type O Negative album, yet it completely works. The heaviness and the emotion that we found in the lyrics is absolutely mirrored in the music, because we have all these lavish synthesizers and this reverb heavy guitar, so it all kind of works together. And like I mentioned earlier, I think it's really the flow of the entire album that really helps to make it so outstanding. So we don't have a bunch of songs that sound identical to one another. Each one truly is distinct, yet they all fit perfectly together and kind of build upon one another. So in a nutshell, October Rust is purely majestic. But now I want to shift tracks and talk about why I think the album sounds the way it does. What was the psychology that was going on behind the scenes? Well, I think there were actually a lot of interesting factors that were at play. First, like so many other artists, Peter really battled a lot of demons over the years, including both alcohol and drug abuse. He also spent time in both a mental institution and in a jail. Yet despite all of these things, during the time that he was writing October Rust, he actually seemed to be doing quite well. After the success of Bloody Kisses, there was this expectation that they were going to become stadium stars, and they were really excited about this. They felt fresh and they felt inspired, and they were enjoying working on the new album. But Kenny Hickey, who was the guitarist of the band, explained that after the album was released, there was a deep disappointment that was felt because it completely underperformed at retail. The timing of the album's release unfortunately coincided with all the Napster fiasco that was happening during the time, and a lot of people were simply just not investing as much in music. This disappointment led to a lot of negative consequences for the band, including Kenny and Peter's drug addiction that followed, which, as Kenny said, just took them down the ladder very, very quickly. But prior to all this, there had been a sense of optimism, and the darkness that we feel in October Rust feels very, very different than the darkness that we feel in the next album, which was called World Coming Down. That album truly takes despondency and bleakness to a new level because Peter had completely spiraled into depression and was struggling with mental health issues in addition to substance abuse. Peter was very open about having bipolar disorder and needed psychiatric treatment from time to time to help him with his depressive episodes. During this time, he stopped working out, he stopped lifting weights, and he suffered a lot of personal losses. But again, October Rust was written before any of this happened, so it's almost like a time capsule of his happier days. I do want to mention, however, that Peter was able to overcome all of these demons, and he was clean and sober at the time of his death, and he was feeling very optimistic and creative and ready to write music at the time of his untimely death, which almost makes the death even more tragic because he had so much potential, he had so much to look forward to. But he was still able to leave us with so much music that is so meaningful for so many of us, including October Rust, and I find it remarkable that even the music he wrote when he was in his darkest days is still so impressive and so memorable. He also stated publicly that music helped him greatly and it was incredibly therapeutic for him. It helped him to release these negative emotions. It helped him to let go of depression and anger and frustration, not only when he was writing the music and the lyrics, but also when he was playing the music for his fans. And even though it's not a psychological factor, I also have to mention that October Rust came with an intentional decision to change the musical direction of the band. They came to the conclusion that anyone could just scream on an album, and they wanted to showcase their talent. They wanted to focus on writing hooks as well as writing songs that had verses that were as catchy as the choruses, which is something that I think they definitely succeeded at. In addition, Peter was very open about the fact that he loved goth girls, and with the release of Bloody Kisses, he noticed that there was definitely a difference in the audience. There was a much stronger female presence, and he saw that as an opportunity. So he started to write music that would appeal to that demographic. He loved women and he liked the energy that they were bringing to the shows. So you can definitely hear that change in October Rust. And there was one more factor that I think really contributed to the sound of the album, which is that Peter was reading the book Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice at the time. He was really into the theme, and it really started to influence the music that he was writing as well as the overall look of the band and the sound of the band. Now, this is a theme that still continues to be popular, but no one can deliver on the theme the way that Peter Steele and Typo Negative could. So those are my thoughts on October Rust, but I would love to hear yours, so don't forget to leave a comment down below. I absolutely feel it was Peter's magnum opus and definitely deserving of another listen if you have not heard it in a while. So with that being said, I truly hope that you enjoyed today's analysis, and I will see you next week.